Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Now let us give charity. Start off the day by giving charity. Charity saves from all bad things. Charity brings all good things. Charity saves from death. Charity brings the geula. Give to others, and Hashem will give to you. Now, let's all say a praise to the creator of the universe, who after all is creating us and loves us all. And that praise is as follows. Hodu Hashem ki tov ki lo chazdo. Praises is to God because he is good, and his kindness is to the world, to the physical world. There it is. Now, let's start learning. One second. Get rid of this dirt over here. Okay. Here we go. Now we're going to start to learn this week's Torah, Likuti Torah. One for half an hour. Okay, we're coming to the holiday of Passover. The holiday of Passover, it's called also the holiday of Matzot. There's several names what it's called. It's called the holiday of our freedom, Zman Cherotenu. It's called Chag Matzot. It's called the holiday of Matzot. It's called Chag Pesach, the holiday of jumping over. God jumped over. The houses, skipped over the houses of the Jews when in the plague of the firstborn. Okay, so now we say there's several commandments in that night. One of them is that we eat matzah. Another one is to talk about going out of Egypt. These are commandments from the Torah. To talk about commandments. And about 1,000 years ago, maybe a little bit more, they developed a whole book of praises that are said, that have been accepted, and that are said by all the Jewish people on the night of Passover. It's called the Haggadah, the Haggadah of Pesach, from the word V'higadata lebincha. You have to say over to your son, you have to relate the story of going out of Egypt. And the Jewish people have been doing this for the last 3,339, I think, years. 9 years. Okay, so they've been doing this nonstop, talking about going out of Egypt. So it says, one of the things we say on the night of Passover, we say that on this night we eat matzah, and we put our hands on it, we say, matzah zu, this matzah. Why are we eating it? Because God revealed the Jewish people, and they didn't have time to eat regular, they didn't have time to let their dough delay to rise up. What's the difference between matzah and not matzah? Matzah is what's called, what do they call it? Unleavened bread. Unleavened bread, I guess. I don't know what the word leavened means, but anyway, it's bread that doesn't rise up. It's simply water and flour, no extra ingredients, and it doesn't rise up. What is the ingredient? What makes the ingredients for chametz? Chametz is leavened bread. Leavened bread is the same thing. Water, water and flour, but you just leave it for a while and you let it raise up. So that we see in the Haggadah of Passover that we eat matzah today because the Jewish people would have liked to eat regular bread, but they didn't have time. They didn't have time. They didn't speak. They didn't have time to let the bread rise, and they had to run away. They had to run out of Egypt. And that's what we say on the night of Passover. This is very problematic for several reasons. First of all, we had a commandment when we were already in Egypt to eat matzah. They had to eat matzah with the Passover offering. They brought a sheep or a goat, and they would sacrifice it and eat it the night of Passover. That's the meal that we make. That can only be done in the time of the Holy Temple. They did it when they left Egypt, and then when they came into the land of Israel, they did it again. They would take a sheep or a goat to the Holy Temple and sacrifice it and eat it. But matzah is a commandment for all time, but they were commanded to eat matzah before they left Egypt. So, if so, this is misleading. It says that the Jewish people, why do we eat matzah? Because we were kicked out of Egypt and the bread didn't have time to rise up. But that's not so. We eat matzah because we were commanded to before we were kicked out of Egypt. We couldn't have gotten out of Egypt until we did says we had everybody has to be in their home and they had to eat from the Paschal lamb and they had to eat from the matzah and then they got out of Egypt. And here we're saying, no, the reason we eat matzah is because after we got out of Egypt, we would have liked to eat bread, but we couldn't. What about the matzah they ate before? It says that the angel that killed all the Egyptians, the firstborn, that angel happened at midnight, exactly at midnight. Exactly at midnight it happened. And they were commanded to eat matzah before midnight. So what's going on? So that's going to be the question that we're going to ask. And it's going to end up that there's two types of matzah. We'll see. The main point of this is not so much the legal aspect of it, but why in the world do we eat matzah at all? What's it got to do with anything? Okay, I think something very important we have to remember when we read this is, one second, let's make this bigger. Here we go. The Jewish people getting out of Egypt and receiving the Torah, this was a very monumental thing. This went against all the laws of nature, all the laws of history. All the laws of, the principles of your religion. All the things that influence the world. Going out of Egypt, it is surpassed. History, for instance, history. I don't think there's a history in the book in the world that explains at all what happened when the Jewish people got out of Egypt. What exactly happened there? I don't know if there's a book that can explain it. Right? God, the creator of the universe, completely changed nature in the world, made 10 plagues, split the sea, took all the Jews, about 3 million Jews that had been slaves just a month before, a month and a half before, and he brought them to Mount Sinai, and he spoke to them, the creator of the universe, and gave them this book called the Torah, that God himself gave. This is not mentioned in any. Okay, but the Jewish people say that it happened, and we've been celebrating this for 3,300 years, that God himself cares about the world, and he actually changed the world. So historically, what about scientifically? How can you explain in any way scientifically what happened? But if such a thing happened, how could it even be explained? Right? That God split the sea and then he spoke to all the Jews. I mean, the only way you could maybe explain it scientifically is say that all the Jews are just nuts. They're just crazy. They're just crazy to pass down this ridiculous story. And they've been holding on to it for so long, it just doesn't make any sense. And there is a few other religions that try to surpass and to replace Judaism. They don't even make up such a story, right? They don't say, well, maybe God did take the Jews out of Egypt, but after that, he took all the Christians out of the world, all the barbarians, and he split the sea, split the Atlantic Ocean, and then the Muslims come along and said, okay, that could be true, but afterwards came along Muhammad, and he split the Pacific Ocean, and they don't even make up such a story like that. And they say that the guy came out of the desert, something had a message, and we only wrote it down a few hundred years later, and nobody saw it, nobody knows it. Make up a story like the Jews. Nobody even wants to make up a story, right? And maybe that's one of the reasons that all these other religions are so successful, is because their stories are a little bit believable, and our story just doesn't make any sense. It's not, and there's no point to it. The Jews, after all these miracles, they worship the golden calf. Okay, so here what we're talking about here, this is a thing which is not supernatural. It's not supernatural. This is like supernatural. The creator of all nature revealed himself. Revealed himself. It's like you go to a concert or something and say, wow, this music is just amazing. Who wrote it? All of a sudden the composer came out. Here he is, a simple guy. He wrote, can't believe it. There he is. He wrote this. It's this concert, right? Well, concert. Here we have the creator of the whole universe, the creator of the whole universe, not just a beautiful concert. And he appeared. He appeared. He made his appearance, one-time appearance. And all that just never happened since then. But what did happen since then is God's creating the world. So he's creating us. And he gave us the Torah. And the Torah is the basis of what's good and what's bad. That's the laws of, how do you want to call it? The laws of spiritual nature. Spiritual nature is not really, I guess, the right word. Human, what is human nature? The laws of human nature. What is really right and what's wrong? Okay, so here we are. When the Jewish people left Egypt, so one of the things before they left Egypt, they were commanded to eat matzah. And we say in the Haggadah of Passover that the reason we ate matzah is because after they left Egypt, they ate it. If they wanted to eat chometz, they wanted to eat regular leavened bread that rose up, but they couldn't because they were driven out of Egypt. Okay, so it seems that there's two types of matzah. One that was before they left Egypt, and the other one was after they left Egypt, or more exactly, before midnight. That's when the angel of whatever appeared. That's when actually God killed the firstborn. It wasn't the angel of death. The God appeared and he killed the firstborn of the Egyptians. That was midnight. And then they drove the Jews out of Egypt. They actually left was in the morning. But that's after midnight. Okay, so here we go. What we say in the Haggadah of Passover, it's mashmat, seems to imply ha'ilu lo gorshu, that if the Jews were not driven out of Egypt, he speak lachmitz, and the dough had time to rise up. Because if you just leave dough alone for like 9 minutes, then it rises up. And some people say 18 minutes. And especially if it's warm, then it raises up even faster. But it seems to imply from the Haggadah that if the Jews had not been driven out of Egypt, they would have eaten chametz, but they were already commanded that on the 10th day of this month, everybody has to take a sheep to their house, and you have to eat it al matzot or morim yochlu. You have to eat it with matzah and moror before midnight, before they left Egypt. The gam ledorot, and also now, after they will now in our generation, it says nitzava. Hear this? That's what we get like 3-4 times. That means there's going to be bombs soon. Going to be rockets. You ever see the rockets they shoot? These things are massive. These things are just massive. They've shot, I think to date, like 2,500 or so. Massive, huge rockets. They make what Saddam Hussein shot look like, Lego. Massive things that could, who knows. And each one of these rockets that these Iranians shoot has in it, like, what is it, 20 something sub rockets they shoot out. And so for some reason, they're not doing much damage. They're not really, it's really quite amazing. I mean, Iran, I think, is like 2,000 miles away, something like that, from Israel. We have got no connection. We're not like on their border, or that we're threatening them or something like that. We have absolutely no threat. And they're shooting bombs at us. Why are they shooting bombs? Who knows? In any case, they're not God, with God's obvious divine intervention. He's protecting us, which he's been doing pretty good for the last 2,000 years. Gam Ledoros, also for the generations, we're commanded that we have to, it says 7 days, you should not eat chametz. It's forbidden. So the reason that we eat matzah is definitely not, one second, because we didn't have time to leave. It was forbidden to eat matzah. And the matzah that they ate in Egypt was before they left. So why does it say in the Haggadah of Passover differently? It says we have to eat matzah. But Pasuk Atzma says, and it says you have to understand that the commandment for the generation is a remembrance for going out of Egypt. And the matzah that they ate when they left Egypt, that was before they left Egypt, not after, not matzah that couldn't rise up. It was before they left Egypt, they had to eat matzah. Halo Pesach Mitzrayim, going out of Egypt, is only forbidden to eat chametz el yom echad. When they left Egypt, it was only forbidden for them 1 day to eat. When they left, now it's forbidden 7 days. But when they left Egypt, chametz, this raising up bread, right, was only forbidden 1 day. After that, they could have eaten whatever they wanted to. They had to eat matzah the first night. It was forbidden to eat chametz. But then after that, the next day, it was permissible to eat chametz. So what does it mean that they couldn't eat chametz because their bread didn't have time to rise? Not only that, that doesn't make any sense because it takes 9 minutes for dough to rise up. And when they were driven out of Egypt, it says they took their dough with them. So it certainly had time to rise up. I mean, if you're moving, right, the dough rises up. Only if you're kneading the dough, it says it doesn't rise up. If you're kneading it, but if you have it in your backpack or something, then it certainly is going to rise up. So what does it mean? Okay. So what is this thing of matzah? What do you have to eat matzah? Why? So English like this: going out of Egypt was only 1 day. And therefore, dafka ki gorshu, because they were driven out, because of this, they ate matzah all the rest of the days of Passover. Oh, so now we're starting to understand something. Really, the fact is true. We have our original question that matzah was eaten by the Jews before they left Egypt, before they were driven out. They had to eat matzah. But after they were driven out, they could have eaten chametz. They could have eaten regular bread, but they couldn't because the bread couldn't rise up. Right? Couldn't rise up. Why couldn't it rise up? Who knows? We don't know yet. Doesn't make any sense. Why couldn't it rise up? It had time to rise up. Also, this is written in another place. It says that they went out of Egypt. Nevertheless, the commandment was 7 days. And this is the remembrance for going out of Egypt. So really, when they left Egypt, they did not have to eat matzah for 7 days. They only had to eat it one time, and that was before they left Egypt. They had to eat matzah. But we're commanded 7 days to eat as a remembrance for going out of that. This is the matzah that we eat for 7 days. That's to remind us of the bread that couldn't rise up. Why couldn't it rise up? We'll see, because it says because there was such a revelation of God that couldn't rise up. What's rising up of bread got to do with the revelation of God? We'll see. Okay, now the answer to this whole business is going to be that there's 2 different types of matzah. There's one type of matzah which is before they left Egypt, and then there's another type of matzah which they ate after they left Egypt, or more exactly, before midnight. It was before, and then there was the matzah afterwards, and that's the matzah that's being spoken of in the Haggadah. Let's see. Okay, first of all, what's the big thing about matzah? What's so important about it? What is the idea of eating matzah? Matzah is called, by the way, the food of faith. It's called the food of faith. Matzah puts faith inside of you. Faith is above understanding. Faith means something you know, you have a feeling exists, but you can't understand it logically. You're throwing your matzah is the food of faith. Okay, let's see this. Okay, before we understand this thing of eating matzah and how it's so important, and especially you have to remember that when the Jewish people left Egypt, that's the birth of the Jewish people. And the essence of the Jewish people is God. God, especially now in our days, there's so much anti-Semitism going on in the world, anti-Jewish hatred going on in the world, and no one can really explain why. No one can really explain why they hate the Jews so much, right? I mean, the classic case, the Nazis, right? The Nazis hated the Jews. No one can really explain why they hated them so much. What exactly? They made up all these reasons why, but the reasons just don't hold water. They just don't hold water. And even if you want to say that there are Jews that did some of these things, so certainly was not, all the Jews. Maybe 1% of the Jews were cheaters. Who knows? And other nations don't have cheaters and liars. What was the cause? Why did they hate them? Why is this thing that lasts so long? And the Jews also last. They have all these enemies that want to destroy them, and the enemies are like 100 times. They're outnumbered 1,000 to 1. The enemies lose and the Jews win. Right? What is this? So the Jews are God's people in the same way that God is eternal, so the Jews are eternal. But what does it mean to be God's people? And so that's the idea of eating matzah. The Jewish people became God's people when they left Egypt. They became God's servants when they left Egypt. Avodayim, it says. Okay, in order to become a servant of God, you got to eat matzah. It's an essential ingredient in producing a Jew. Matzah. What is the thing about matzah? Yesh l'haktim. First of all, we have to understand what are the holidays. She'ikar moadim hu bechinas hasimcha is joy. Like it says, v'samachta b'chagecha. You have to be happy in your holidays. Jewish people would go 3 times to the temple. It was, and when there used to be a temple, they would go 3 times to the temple and they would be happy. They go to the temple and they would feel happy. Why would they feel happy? Because they would feel that God is creating them. They would feel that they're creations. But there's a lot of different aspects of God. Why, if you feel you're being created, why are you happy? Why does that make you happy? It should make you just feel weird or afraid. Right? I'm being created by God all the time. Wow, it's says no, it made them feel happy. Why? Because in the time of the holidays, even now, we don't have the temple, but it's still what's called the awareness of understanding. Mochin de Ima. Ima is mother, and that refers to Bina, which is understanding. There's what's called Chachma and Bina and Dat. That's intellect. Every human being has it, and also corresponding to that, God also has it. That's one of the means we're made in God's image. So Chachma is called father. Ima is called Bina. I'm sorry. And Chachma is called father. That's like faith. That's awareness which is above understanding. That's called father. And mother is called, is another name for Bina, understanding. Like I say, God also has this aspect of understanding. An aspect of God we can sort of understand. That's called Mochin De'ima. That's what it says in Hallel. In the Hallel praise. There's a Psalms from King David. It says, Moshiach NOW, that God takes the barren woman, aim upon him to be a happy mother of children. That's the holidays. The holidays are happy. We feel and understand something about God. But Shabbat, this is a higher level. This is Giloi Mochen de Abba. This is more revelation of the revelation of Abba, of God's Chachma. We want to call it faith. Above understand. This is higher. The Ein Shom Bechinat Giloi, it's not rejoicing like on Yom Tov. Okay, so in Judaism, there are holidays and there's Shabbat. The whole business of Shabbat and holidays, it all comes from the Torah. And the Torah comes from God. God wrote the Torah. And he wrote the Torah because it's his wisdom and his will. The Torah is what God wants. Another way of saying it, the Torah is God. The Torah is like a picture of what God is. You think that God is some sort of a big white light or something like that? Well, I mean, that's, that also could be true. But the fact is that what's the essence of God is the Torah. Like a human being. What's a human being? He has brains, he has the heart, he has emotions, he has all these blood vessels and all this nervous system and skeletal system. And all this. Well, God has the same thing. But of course, God is the creator. And we're just creations. So if you want to get a picture of what God is, that's the Torah. That's the Torah. And that's the wisdom of God. And the will of God is manifested when we do what it says in the Torah. So that the Torah is the wisdom and the will of God. You can't hear it, but there's all these explosions going up in heaven. Because Israel has these anti-missile missiles and anti-missiles because the Iranians, they shoot missiles at us, a lot of them, and we have anti-missiles. The whole thing is just a big miracle, the whole thing. Okay, so it says, in this like this, so we have Chachma and Bina. So it says, Bir Mahut Mochin De'ema. Let's explain what is this revelation of God that's in the holidays, which is called the awareness of Ema, of the mother, of understanding God. And the holidays come along, you really understand God. All of a sudden you understand God. I mean, God is understandable. You can understand what God is. It's like the lowest aspect of God is that he's creating you. That's the lowest aspect that he's creating. You understand that? You understand that? That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, right? All the scientists in the world got together, and none of them say that God is creating us. They never come to this conclusion. It's pretty amazing. Science, usually the way science works is that they investigate all of the occurrences in nature, and then they try to make order out of it. The law of gravity, the Newton, he looked and he saw, he made experiments, and then he came to the conclusion that this is what causes gravity. Other people come to other conclusions. But first of all, they observe facts of nature, they observe occurrences in nature, and then they try to make some sort of order out of it. One of the occurrences of nature is that God took the Jews out of Egypt and he gave them the Torah. That was in nature. It was a human thing. It happened, history. Why don't the scientists even deal with it at all? It's not understandable. It says, well, the holidays are, yes, a little bit understandable. If you want to understand God, then a good example is what happens on the holidays. Then God makes himself a little bit more accessible, and you can understand God. And that's what the scientists should be dealing with. What true happiness is the godliness that's revealed in the holidays. So, the fact is that on the holidays, you do feel a little bit more, loose. And people that are big tzaddikim and that they're really sensitive to this, they really do feel something. They do feel something. But here the Rebbe is saying that everybody should feel it. It's just a fact of nature. Okay, so to understand this revelation of God, which is understanding, which is real in the holidays, you can understand there's two types of revelation of Or Ein Sof, of infinite godliness in the world. One of them is Bechinat Hishtalshalus. This is in the way or order of creation. That's like going to be the holidays. The Seder Madrigas in one level to another. This is going from one level to another. That's like the angels are all going crazy, and then there's angels above those angels, and they're going also crazy because there's angels above them that they also go crazy, and they're all going crazy because they realize a little bit of godliness. But there's higher the worlds, so to speak, the dimensions, the more revelation there is, and the more revelation of God that there is, the more they realize that God is not in any of these revelations. God is the source of the revelations. But God is creating the world in an orderly way, just like in a human being. A human being, the essence of a human being is his mind. And then from your mind, you get your emotions. There's people, God forbid, you should never see such a thing, but people who have Alzheimer's. So their mind goes. Their mind is just, that's it. As soon as their mind goes, basically the person is gone. Really? Not exactly. He's still there. But you still know that it's grandpa, still this, but his mind is just not there, so he's got no personality. Then there's other people that they have a mind, but their emotions are all messed up. They understand what's going on in the world, but they just can't take it to heart really what's going on. So they're apathetic or they're so everybody has what's called the same thing with God. Man is creating the image of God. So God has what's called intellect, and he has emotions. And then there's a ray of a ray of a ray. All these things are just aspects of God. Commercial, like seichel midas, like we just said, intellect and emotions. And emotions come into thought. And thought comes into speech. And speech comes into action. This is called the order of creation. That's one way that God is revealed in an orderly fashion. You do the commandments, you learn the Torah. God is revealed in an orderly fashion from one level to another. That's the ideas of Kabbalah. What happens when a Jew learns the Torah, when he does a commandment? So there's different revelations of God that come through different worlds. That's one type of revelation. And the other one is Lamayla Mishtalshlut, above. And that's called Yesh Mi'ayin, something from nothing. Me'ayin Mukhlat, from nothing. So that's what I said. You have grandpa, right? Grandpa, God forbid, he's got Alzheimer's. So his mind goes and his emotions go, and he doesn't know how to think, but the grandpa's still there. It's still grandpa. But according to Judaism, you can't just, give him a shot and kill him. Put him away, whatever. Not allowed to. Why? Because he's still there. It's the same thing with godliness, right? Godliness, there's what's called intellect, emotions, the orderly way of God, and then there's the essence of God. Then there's the essence of God. I'm just giving this example. It's not not 100% accurate example, but I'm just saying. So there's the whole order, let's say the personality of God, and then there's the existence of God. The same thing with the world. There's all the different levels of reality in the world, the spiritual levels, and then there's the existence of the world. Existence of the world is the same. The spiritual worlds exist, and the physical worlds exist. These are just different form of existence. They're spiritual, and they're all part of the creation. So there's two aspects of godliness. One is levels of godliness, and then there's what's called the essence of God, the fact that God just creates everything. As we'll discuss more, God willing, tomorrow, what this has to do with matzah. Now let's learn the Debar Malchut.